Hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining in this edition of webinar. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in whichever time zone you are. Thanks for joining for this edition. Today, we are going to talk about ITIL CSI. CSI stands for Continual Service Improvement. Um, this is again an intermediate course an overview of that, but primarily we are going to talk about some practical stuff, right? Um, how can you implement continual service improvement in your organizations and get benefited out of it? So, for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to talk about some practical stuff of how do you implement continual service improvement. Um, Before we begin, a brief introduction about myself. My name is Suresh GP. I would be a facilitator for this webinar. I've had over 14 plus years of experience as a service management consultant, practitioner, trainer, certified ITIL V2 service manager, expert, PMP, CGIT, ISO 20000 lead auditor, and also happy to be an instructor for Edureka, delivering the foundation till ITIL expert courses. So this webinar is delivered through Edureka. So we will get started as to what is the agenda looking today. So we're going to talk about the following objectives. As we have in every webinar, I would strongly encourage you to post your questions using the question panel. And as and when we get time during the logical breaks, we will talk and get more details and discuss about it. If you wish to speak, then you can raise your hands and then we can unmute to do that. But that we will do it at the last. So I encourage you to ask questions, and we'll be more than happy to discuss and cover during the course of this webinar. So today we are going to talk about introduction to CSI, which is continual service improvement, and why it is important in organizations. We are going to talk about the principles behind that, the continual service improvement principles, the processes, methods, and techniques that are being used generally as part of continual service improvement. How do you start your journey in continual service improvement? Like it could be a small size organization, it could be your medium organization or large enterprise, irrespective of whether you are in IT or you are in manufacturing, telecom, insurance, whatever vertical. And what are the next steps and Q&A? Yeah. So these are the objectives that we would cover in the next 45 minutes or so, and we'll give some time, plenty of time for Q&A, so that we can address your questions. And if you have your own practical issues or challenges that you're facing implementing continual service improvement, then we would also address that. So I spend a lot of time with my clients, working with them in their continual service improvement journey. It need not be based on ITIL. ITIL is one of the framework. It could be based on lean, it could be based on agile, it could be based on Six Sigma and various other frameworks and methodologies, right? So in our section today, we would talk about CSI in principle, right? In the fulcrum of it. So we will be talking about different methodologies, frameworks, and best practices that are actually helping to enable your organizations on continual service improvement, right? So if you start to introduce CSI, so continual service improvement is one of the core volumes of ITIL version 3. So like any framework, the ITIL version has evolved from version 1, version 2, and version 3. And the current version that is running in terms of ITIL version 3 is 2011, right? Now, whenever I talk with people asking what is CSI, they come with a very quick answer. It is continuous service improvement. Now, the question I wanted to ask is it continuous service improvement or continual service improvement? What's the kind of difference that we are talking about? I think it's very much important to clearly differentiate between CSI in the context of um, uh, ITIL, right? Now, if you look at continual versus continuous, now continuous mean you are you are going at a speed, let's say from 0 kilometers per hour to 140 kilometers per hour, right? The assumption is that you are going on a highway completely fast, that there is nothing that is stopping you from in the main road. Now, in reality, you can never do continuous service improvement. What you need to do is you will have a milestone that you reach, and then you look back whether what you want to achieve as part of target, have you reached there, and then look at mechanisms to improve to the next target, right? So you do a step by step approach to go to the planned or the future model of operation. So that's why the step change is called the continual service improvement. The straight line that we talked about from 0 kilometers to 140 kilometers is your continuous service improvement. So in any of the time that you work, you cannot do a continuous service improvement. You can only do a continual service improvement where you step up, look at what change you have done, whether it has received your results, and then make amendments and then take on to the next model, right? Now, many of you would be aware of the quality methods, right? Deming cycle. I have a next slide that talks about the Deming cycle, which is primarily talking about plan, do, check, and act, right? So you plan something, you have an issue, you plan to fix that particular issue, you do something, that is, you do an action for that, you check whether that action has addressed the issue, and then you improve further, that you act on it, right? Now, as I told you, when you talk about continual service improvement, it's not about just ITIL. ITIL is IT infrastructure library as a framework. What is lean? Now, if you look at manufacturing sector, and lean is coming typically from the Toyota, Toyota kind of companies, where they are talking about how do you minimize waste, how do you make sure that you improve productivity, right? So we are talking about optimization as part of continual service improvement. Now, what is agile, right? Agile is doing things much more faster, efficient in small increments, right? So instead of you looking at developing a whole product like earlier using the waterfall method, where people used to spend time in requirement analysis, design, build, test, and deploy, people are talking about incremental improvement, talking about minimum viable product that is useful for you, and then slowly you improve upon the features, right? So that is another way of looking at continual improvement. Six Sigma is primarily looked at the manufacturing sector. So you will look at number of defects per million, right? So we are talking about Six Sigma as a methodology to improve the service. Um, at the end of the day, whether you use ITIL, you use Lean, you use Agile or Six Sigma, what we are doing is you are executing and delivering business value. So that's the whole point that we are driving as part of continual service improvement. Now, this is what we just talked about in the Deming cycle, right? So it's talking about plan, do, check, and act. It's a cycle, right? If you look at this particular graph, you have a time scale that is right from today to a week to a month to a year. And then maturity level is probably, if you are very familiarized with CMMI, you talk about um, the level 0 to level 5. So level 0 being not existent to level 5 being optimized, right? So you go to that level. So you if you look at it over a period of time, the maturity also improves, and then this is the step change that we're talking about. So from here to the next step, you see what we need to achieve, you see whether we have achieved that position, and then you keep on improving over a period of time, right? So you are looking at mechanisms where the there is a baseline established, that bare minimum you need to say I need to meet 95 percentage of my SLAs or service level agreements. So you have a baseline, and you look at it, and after some time you start improving on that, and then go further on to it, right? So that's the way of looking at Deming cycle. Now, why is CSI very important in organizations, right? Why are on the earth of talking about lean, agile, Six Sigma, ITIL? How is organization getting benefited of CSI, right? That we need to understand from that perspective, right? From an organization standpoint, be it a small, mid-sized organization or a large enterprise, right? What they are doing is they are looking at delivering business value, right? What we are talking about delivering business value in the form of improving productivity, right? Productivity of people who are working on that. So you're far more efficient to do it instead of two people doing a job. There is one person who is doing that. So you're saving that one FTE or one person effort. You are optimizing cost, right? That could be cost that you're spending about $100 in producing something. If you're able to produce it at $80, right, then you save about $20, right? And that will improve your bottom line. The next one is resource optimization. How efficiently are we using resources? Now, resources can be infrastructure resources, hardware resources, software resources, people as a resources, right? Organizational assets, anything of that sort. And then primarily customer satisfaction, because your customers are satisfied, then they give you more business, right? So invariably the organizations are using these best practices, frameworks, and methodologies to implement those frameworks in improving the way things are going across, right? So importance of CSI is primarily looking at these parameters of cost, resource, productivity, and customer satisfaction. So there is a belief that if you are able to target on these elements, then it's of great benefit to the organization. It means improved people morale, it's improved business. That means a lot of expansion in scope, a lot of people getting promotions, and so on and so forth. Right. So there is a cyclic in nature of why CSI is important in organizations being delivered. Now, when it comes to an organization, right? So organization has got a large way of looking at what are their prime goals, right? So you could be a telecom company, you could be a manufacturing company. So you have a vision, mission, goals, right? So you look at the top, like we need to be the top 10 telecom companies in the world, right? So from there, you start with your overall strategy, and from that strategy, you need to come to the next level of tactical layer and then to the operations layer, right? So, an easier way to cascade from the top to bottom, that means from the high level overview to the bottom level, how it relates is depicted by a balanced scorecard. Now, typically, this has been how goals are cascaded from the top level organizations to the various business units and then to the individual departments to take care, right? So the balanced scorecard is a methodology that was defined by Robert Kaplan and David Norton in 94, where they are dividing into four quadrants. The first quadrant is the financial perspective, where we are talking about how much is the bottom line, top line, profitability, and all that stuff, right? The second one that we are talking about is the customer perspective, right? What are my customers looking at it? What kind of, how are they using our existing products and services? What are their expectations as part of doing it? For example, um, Apple or Samsung, they are releasing different versions based on what the customer needs. It could be the look and feel, it could be features, functionalities, different apps. So you start thinking from a customer perspective as what is my customer needing and which market are you addressing, right? Then the next two things is primarily from an organization perspective, learning and growth perspective. That means how are you training and developing your own people in terms of skills, in terms of competencies to deliver something. For example, you might be a traditional infrastructure provider and then you move to a cloud based offering. What kind of skills that you need to do? Do you need to get them cloud certified? For example, you are operating on a service desk, so you need your people to be trained on ITIL. You need to get people aware of all the processes, all the best practices. The next one is the business process perspective or operational efficiency. right? So you have your own inbuilt process, tools, and policies and frameworks that you opt as an organization delivering business, right? What you need to also think is, how can I improve my underlying process? How do I bring in more process efficiency? How do I bring in more effectiveness? So these are four different quadrants in which the goals get cascaded from the top till the bottom, right? So that's a easier way to understand what goal are we achieving and how can we achieve the goal. Then use the CSI as a process to go and achieve the target that you have envisioned in this particular balance scorecard. Okay, so this is one of the mechanism to cascade from top to bottom. Now, what is the approach that you need to think about when we talk about CSI, right? So it always starts from the top. So we talk about what is the vision of the company, right? So you need to understand as a company, what is your vision, mission, goals, and objectives. So what is your goal? Do we need to be a top 10 telecom company? Do I need to be a top 10 manufacturing company? Do I need to be top 10 in this particular region or in the world? So you can have your own goal and objective as a company, and then we need to understand where are we now. Okay, I need to be a top 10 manufacturing company or a telecom company. Where are we now? So we are in 20th or 50th position. Okay, how do we know that? So you use an assessments. So it means you gauge the maturity, the capability of an organization using some of the processes and say, okay, I have been ranked in the kind of Gartner, by Forrester, or by any analyst at this particular position, right? So my simple example could be, let's say you're playing tennis and you watch tennis, right? They have seeded players, so they rank 50th in worldwide as juniors or seniors or individuals or doubles, right? And they keep on improving the ranking as they play the tournaments and they register a lot of wins. So you need to have an assessment as to where we are now, and then understand where do we want to be, right? Where do we want to be? So if I am in the 20th position, how do I go to the 10th position, right? You cannot really jump from 20th position to 10th position. So you need to go from 20 to 15, 15 to 10, and then go up the value chain. So your target as where do you want to be is to have measurable targets. So how do I go from the top 20th position to top 10th position? How will I be measured? Will I be measured on profitability? Will I be measured based on customers? Will I be measured based on the number of geographies that I operate, and so on and so forth, right? Then how do we get there? Okay, we know the targets. How do we get there? So that means you need to go with training, we need to invest on people, you need to do marketing, you need to come up with better products and services. So we need to come up with all those ideas, plans, and strategies as how we can become the top 10 player. That means you can look at your competition. Like between Apple and Samsung, for an example, Apple and Samsung are closely watching each other of how they are playing in this market. If Samsung comes up with some positions, how do Apple look at it, right? So there is a constant need to keep your eyes and ears open as to what the market is all about and how do we get there, right? So you come up with a service improvement plan and processes and do that. So did we get there? How did we know we did get there? Of course, you need to have measurement and metrics, right? In terms of profitability, in terms of growth, in terms of market share, and all that stuff, depending on what kind of measures or outcomes that you're doing, and then keep the momentum going. So it's a very simplified approach to start with a vision. Where are we now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? And do you know we have got there, and start continuing it? So the artifacts that will support the items, vision for business, where are we now with assessments, where do we want to be with measurable targets, how do we get there, again use the service improvement plan, and do we get there, right? So this is the typical CSA approach that is useful for organizations to keep improving on their products and services. Now, where do you start your journey, right? So we have understood approach. Where do you start? Now, I have a different corollary as to people say if you don't measure anything, you cannot improve anything, right? So I have a couple of corollaries in the way that we do. So first, if you want it desperately, you have to measure it, right? It could be that you want to be a topper in your school or academic colleges. So what you want is know how you are performing in a particular class, and then look at when it goes to your board exams and TOEFL or GRE or SAT scores, you will perform, right? So you need to measure it. Now, if you measure it, you better want it, right? So measures work. Now, what we have observed is um, in order to achieve something, your behavior will also work. For example, let's say you are getting a grad school, you're aiming for something, you are about getting 80% in your board exams, and you want to get about 95 in order to get medical admissions, right? So what you do is you get up early in the morning, you spend a lot of time preparing for your exams, preparing, taking some notes, going to the library. So what happens is, because you've fixed a particular target of moving from 80% to 95%, you start doing some behavioral aspects of spending more time, reading more books, spending more time in library to do that. So that's what the corollary A stands. So if you don't need something, don't measure. I know a lot of reports go in organizations every Friday. They send dashboards, they send reports, which have no use at all. So they measure some parameters which is not at all being relevant. So the question is, don't waste time and money in reporting something which is not meaningful, right? So report which is very relevant, which really addresses the target that you're focusing upon in the context of an organization. So these are some of the things that you need to remember when you start your CSA journey. Now, the third and final most is you need to be in control, right? You need to know how are you improving. And now I'm just trying to correlate a real life example. Now I'm going to run a marathon, which is about 42 kilometers, right? Now, if I need to do 42 kilometers, first I need to know how do I start? What is my level? So can I run a kilometer? Can I run 3 kilometers? Can I run 5 kilometers? So slowly I need to have a schedule where it moves me from 3 kilometer to 5 kilometer to 10 kilometer. I have to run that and slowly start doing half marathons, which is about 21 kilometers, and then slowly improve, right? So you have to be in control of that. You cannot just go pound yourself to reach to a target then and there, right? So it has to be a mechanism to deliver things very meaningfully and efficiently, right? So it's important to understand that you need to follow the way things do it in a step by step manner to get control. So you have a strategic vision, which is the vision from the top. We talked about balance scorecard, which you need to validate. Come up with targets and metrics is useful to direct you whether you are on the right track. If I need to run a marathon of 42 kilometers, where are we today? When will you reach 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 21 kilometers, 42 kilometers? Have you done it before? What's the kind of routine that you need to do? What's the kind of diet that you need to follow? All of them, right? So you need to have targets and metrics that measure you to get to that level, right? The next one is evidence. To justify, what is the evidence that you have reached that goal? Can you give me a dashboard of how much runs did you do, how much data that you covered, and then look at, okay, if I need to reach this one, how, what changes I need to make, because I'm not making substantial progress. So if you want to score 195 in the board exams, and but we are only scoring about 60, you need to do something radically changed, right? Otherwise you will not be able to meet the 95% target. So you take the corrective changes, improvements to intervene and make those stepwise improvements to look at what changes you are, right? Um, so is it a step-by-step process? Yes, Rutu Himanti. It is a step-by-step process, properly defined. Look at where you are, what needs to be achieved, and then you move on that. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question in the context of service improvement, right? Now, this is the mother of the service improvement process, which we call it as a 7-step process, right? We spend a lot of time in our courses to give examples of it. So we just have about an hour, so I will go into the building blocks, right? So if you look at the plan, do, check, act, which is the Deming cycle, so it's a continual improvement, right? So we are talking about mechanisms to improve step by step. So first you do is you talk with your identify the improvement strategy. So you look at your vision, your business needs, your goals, right? Define what you want, what you will measure, and then how will you going to get data, right? So what data are you going to talk about? Are you going to talk about your customer data, your performance data, your availability data, your capacity data? What are you going to measure, right? What is your goal, right? So you have to collect the data. So defining what you're going to measure in terms of service level agreements, in terms of performance goals, all that combined with gathering the data is important, which will be formed as part of the data part. Then, how frequently will you process? Will you do it monthly reporting? Will you do it in bi-weekly reporting? What tools are you using? How accurate it is, right? So you will use a lot of tools. You will use a lot of mechanisms to register, close the data, and see where you are improving. It's simple like going to a doctor. The doctor asks is, okay, can you do the periodic test? So I want to look at your blood pressure. I want to look at your sugar, your cholesterol. I want to look at your treadmill test and see what you're good at it and what you are not do it, and then come up with the analysis, right? So you're looking at a mechanism to analyze the information. What is the trend you're looking at it? Are you below normal sugar, or over and above your cholesterol levels or BP, where you need to change? And you present that information in terms of reports, right? What action plan? So, for example, let's say you are having an over cholesterol. So people say, okay, you need to reduce your fat, right? There is a high good cholesterol and a bad cholesterol, so you need to stop taking those stuff. You need to have a fitness regime. That means you need to do 45 minutes of exercise. You need to concentrate on a diet, on some of the steps that you take in order to achieve the target, right? So that is what you will present. You will implement those improvements based on your dietitian, based on your physiologist, your doctor, your general practitioner, and then you keep on improving, right? So it's embedded as part of data, information, knowledge, and then you get wisdom. Now, why do you think you go to a practitioner or a doctor? Because the doctor knows exactly what's your problem just by giving you symptoms. Over a period of time, as you process your data, you know what kind of improvement is due to that, right? I've had instances where I've actually spoken with some manufacturing people who were there in the system for 30, 40 years. And just by the sound of the engine, they will tell you where the problem lies, right? So they are people who are mastered in terms of what is really going across behind the system, right? So those level of details can be improved as we do this 7-step process. So it is very easy looking at identifying a strategy for improvement, define what will you measure, gather the data in terms of who is going to collect the data, what is going to be data, what is the goal that we are doing it, how frequently are you going to process the data, analyze the information that you have, present the information in terms of reports, and then see what action needs to be improved, and then you take the improvement across. So I'll take a pause here to see if you have any other questions at this moment with what we have discussed so far. Rutu, I think, hope you have clarity on the step-by-step process. Okay. Any other questions from anybody from so far you have seen? So we will move on, and please feel free to post your question as it comes in. So what we saw in the 7-step process, right? This particular process can be implemented in all levels, right? So you talk about strategy level. So you're following the same 7-step approach. Then you go to the tactical level, as I talked about, from the business, the big enterprise to business units to individual departments and teams. Like you have a infrastructure team, you have an application team, you have a payroll team, you have an HR team, you have a finance team. So you cascade those 7-step process starting from the top level to the next level to the next level. So that's why you see a continual spiral of CSI of 7 steps from the strategic level to the tactical level to the operational level, right? So it's not that stops at the top level, it goes to the next level, middle level to the bottom level. So everybody are aligned with the overall approach. We saw the balance scorecard on that front as well, right? So it's important to cascade improvements from the top to the bottom so that you are able to achieve the goals that was um, directed at the top level, right? So vision, mission, goals, you remember. So those have to have operational goals. They have to go have tactical goals that will invariably align to the strategic goals that were set by the company. So how do we start? So you can start with a simple register, which is called a CSI register, where you log all improvements. It could be productivity improvement, it could be cost improvement, it could be resource improvement, it could be better efficiency. Just write something and say, what will this idea help to improve certain things? And then there is a CSI manager who records all the improvements. So it could be strategy level improvements, it could be tactical level improvements, it could be operational level improvements. They just start looking at what are the improvements, what is the prioritization that we need to look at it, what is the cost effort benefit that is um, arrived when we implement those improvements, and then they manage, track, and report success, right? So you can start improving in a very small manner, make small improvements, and then slowly get the momentum to improve over and over, right? In all departments. So that's where start simple, get some quick wins, report improvements, and do that. So people use a simple spreadsheet to record it. There's something called as Kanban, which is talking about measurable, pulling work streams and looking at what specific work that we will do, who are the people who are expert in doing that work and making those arrangements. It could be agile, where we talk about backlog, we talk about minimum viable product in order to release a product features. So it could be any of this stuff, right? So there could be different mechanisms. You register the improvements and then use those mechanisms to improve and deliver the improvements that is needed to achieve the business objectives. So it is all has to align with the overall business objectives of delivering something. It's more of a cultural, right? It's important that people think it's all about tools, it's all about process. No, it's all about culture, right? Everybody within the organization, right from the service desk person to the CIO to the CEO of the company, will have to have an attitude of improving something. It could be having a better workplace, it could be better improvement in terms of knowledge sharing and stuff, right? So you can follow lean, agile. Lean is eliminating waste. Agile is being more nimble, quick, swift in adopting to changes. You can do training. So you are right now, you can attend the training and make improvements in the processes. Do measurement and reporting exercise, right? Anything that you cannot measure, you cannot improve. So you have to measure, report meaningfully, and set realistic targets. I know a lot of people think very ambitious targets of achieving the moon. It cannot be done. So make sure that you give yourself time to realistically fix the correct movement, correct things, and then take it forward. Meaningful representation of your metrics. Roll out the 7 step process that I talked about at strategy level. Then you go to the tactical level, which is the next business unit, then to individual departments, right? Important is to communicate, talk with people. What do they think? They might have a great idea, which you should foster that and give a environment where everybody is able to share and learn from each other and do that, right? So I had an experience of doing a gamification workshop where we used to come up with a game and look at improvements in a particular game, and then look at how do we improve this action item and then deliver this as part of the ongoing basis. So I have a slide that will talk about it in a due course. So essentially, these are steps that you need to inculcate when you start your journey of continual service improvement. Any questions? Okay, 1 minute. This seven step process works in a loop. Absolutely, right? It's a continual basis, and you do it in strategy, you do it in design, you do it in transition, you do it in operations and CSI. So it's a continual ways in every place. If in any step, there's a question here, if in any step there is a problem, then it can be reversed. I mean, we can move into the before step. Yes, absolutely. That's where you need to know what is the deliverable out of each and every step. If certain step that you envision some result, is not coming, then you need to look at and say, why is it not coming? Probably the input was wrong, because of which the output is wrong. So you need to look at the input, look at what is being done, where is the gap, and fix the gap so that you run it. It's like you are filling a bucket with water, and the bucket is supposed to fill water, and suddenly you see the water is not getting filled. Then you look into that bucket and you feel a hole is there, because of which there is water draining. So your step is used going to be, look at that, fix that particular hole so that you are able to fill the water, right? It's the same mechanism that you will do as part of this exercise. Hope that answers your question. Okay, so um, going on to the next one is governance, right? I have had experience doing a lot of consulting engagements in Hong Kong, Singapore, China, and Indonesia, where a great idea is just not about an idea. It's about how do you facilitate those ideas? How do you make sure that the good ideas are captured easily? You cannot write big documents people ask to take idea. It has to be very easily, written in the way that people can capture those ideas, right? So what we do is we enable mechanism where speaking people can just write an email, write a word, post in an email, or put it into a Dropbox, or write it in a piece of paper. We had different mechanisms to capture ideas, right? What we did was we collated all these ideas into a think tank pool, and then we formally registered as part of an exercise. But you cannot expect all the people to register it formally, then they will not be interested. So keep a mechanism which is easy for people to fill in, and give a rewarding mechanism, right? What is in for them just by giving their idea? So acknowledge them in terms of the forums, in terms of giving awards, in terms of recognizing people and stuff like that. And then categorize initiative by size in terms of small, medium, large, and then work with the clients, right? It's important that when you work with your customers, they are the best trusted advisor. They give you a lot of inputs. If you just listen to them, you learn a lot of things. I've had some fantastic experience working in with clients in Singapore, where the clients used to come and say, hey, this is how I want you, Suresh, that I think you can help us. And then we work with them in a joint initiatives, and then it is win-win for both of us, right? So you need to look at the working mechanism, how we can work in consensus with the team to deliver something meaningful, right? And make sure that you drive an initiative from start to completion. Don't People are very good in starting. They do campaigns, they do workshops, they do an email everywhere and stuff, and they stop there. I mean, we have to make sure that you have to complete the cycle, because once you start completing the cycle and see results, then the momentum starts getting built up automatically, right? So benefits have to be tracked and show this is how we improve productivity, this is how we provide cost efficiency, and so on and so forth, right? So it's important to get the governance model in place so that you are able to capture those ideas and make it to a tangible results. Okay? It's a practical CSI there's an example that I picked up when I was delivering in consensus with the ITSM of UK. Um, so you have typically design phase, where you before you have the build, you have the requirements, then you do an integration with the processes, tools, then you do a pre-prod, which is basically a staging environment, your user acceptance testing, and your delivery. Right now, there are three aspects. One is it could be a pure delay, like the design team took about 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and that impacts the integration part, the pre-production date, and the delivery phase. Right, there's a pure delay of buffer that deliver that gives that delays the whole project from say 1 month to 2 months, right? Because they are all interlinked. There is a non-value added fact where you think this design effort, there are some efforts that you're doing is not adding value to it. Can we eliminate that? Can we bypass that so that we are able to eliminate the non-value added so that we can compress the timeline, right? Then there could be value added effort that we can focus upon, that when you start focusing on those effects, it actually gives you a better result, right? So that's where we come up in the concept of agile, to come up with a minimum viable product that shows this is how it works. A simplified example could be a particular person is going on a bicycle, right? Now, a bicycle is good for him because he enjoys doing it. And but he thinks that he cannot go faster and he has to press hard. Then you give him a motorcycle. Then he's very happy because he's able to go fast and he's going to be going across. And then he introduce him to a car where he then realizes that to the next level. So if you just take him to a car, he does not understand the value, right? So you need to slowly introduce the changes, improvements, so that people are able to get value from the existing product or service before they go on. So when you do CSI, look at what are the components which are creating pure delay. What are the non-value added effort that we can remove? What are the elements that can add value? Then focus on those elements so that you are able to get meaningful results for your aspects, right? So that's the way that you need to do practical continual service improvement, right? Um, and this is an example that I have uh, playing a game, and I'm going to have a link which I wrote a blog as to what is in for you as an ITSM expert in playing Apollo 13. Now, Apollo 13 is a game that we play in order to teach IT service management as a principle, right? So it's like the Apollo 13 movie where you the crew go to the on a NASA space shuttle. They go there, take pictures, and they come back. The essence of this particular game is to take those people who are going to the to through NASA to the moon to take pictures, and how to use IT service management principles to bring them back safely. So we do 4 rounds typically to do this workshop, where we also have these metrics. So I just wanted to show you some of the metrics. So how is the crew safety? So we have a safety target. There has to be at least 50% crew safety. So in the first round, this team has gone to about 90%, and then they went to 75% to 70, 80%, and then they dropped, right? So you have these process measures, process score, total cost, solving rate, all those stuff that is measured, where you're visibly able to see results moving from round one to round two to round three to round four, right? So in that way, this gives you an understanding of where you're doing good, what we need to do to improve that, right? For example, in this solving rate, first round, they only were able to resolve about a 30 percentage of the target. And then we came up with some improvement measures. Okay, what went right and what went wrong? And then they came up with the suggestions of what areas that would improve in terms of better collaboration, in terms of better communication, in terms of better process design. And then they improved it to 100%. You see, there is a significant improvement by learning what is not working and implementing those improvements and achieving results. So this is a very practical way of seeing how you can assess the situation, look at your target, and make those step changes, step improvements, and reach and improve your productivity, improve your cost efficiency, improve your ability to deliver better customer service, going on and on and on. So I would encourage you to go through this blog. We will be sharing this slide as well as the webinar presentation, and I would encourage you to go through it and see how this was a great experience sharing for the games to understand practical CSI. So at this juncture, do you have any other questions that we can take across? So I don't see any other question at this moment. So I think everything is good. So what are the lessons learned? So we're going to the ultimate plan of what did we learn as part of implementing continual service improvement, right? Um, the aspect was senior management support, right? We need to get senior management support. So if you don't get that support, you cannot really deliver things, right? And CSI is just not about just fancy ideas, right? You're not trying to build a moon, go to the moon. What you're trying to do is make some small changes so that your work becomes a lot more easier. The business as usual becomes a lot more easier, right? So coming to an office, delivering a project, attending a meeting, everything has to be improvised, right? That's what you want. You don't want to have build high funder stuff. You want to have something which is very easy and which need to align with company vision mission. Why? Because if it's not aligned with the vision or mission, the company is not interested to support it. The senior management is not going to support you. They are not going to invest on training and projects and giving you awards and recognition, right? So start something which what you can deliver. So start small and build a credibility and then build the momentum in delivering something meaningful, right? Continuing on that, communicate. Please communicate with your internal and external stakeholders, right? It could be your own people, your employees, your subordinates, your seniors, your project managers, and also your customers. Your customers, you get your customer satisfaction survey, you can get your net promoter score, voice of customer, implement any of the strategies, any of the methodology. They give you a lot of insights for your stuff that you use it for improving the way things are working in this context, right? um, the next aspect is looking at your networks and relationships, right? Looking at CSI as an internalization culture. That means develop ideas and think tanks to see how best you can deliver those stuff, right? What are the aspects that you can focus upon? Make it simple so that people are able to give you ideas, suggestions that you can easily use to deliver something meaningful in your CSI journey. So finally, what are the next steps, right? So knowing about now what is CSI, what are the methodologies, what is the approach, what is the seven-step process, what are the governance model, what is the kind of culture that you need to adopt, understand what is your customers' value, what are the customers wanting you to do in terms of your organization, in terms of your business, clear goals and objectives which has to be aligned with your organizational goals. Remember, if you don't start with the top, you cannot really cascade that particular business goals to IT goals to activity based to do that. So you need to participate from the ground, right? It's not about top level. Under the ground, who are the people, your service desk people, your departments, your project managers, your incident managers, your system administrators, your all of those people, process owners, everybody have to work together to make this happen. It's a collective team effort that we need to do. KISS stands for keep it simple, stupid, which means just simplify all these processes. Make it very, very easy to follow because if you just get it more bureaucratic, it's not going to fall in place, right? So keep it very simple. Even your service, even your surveys, keep it very simple. Measure the value of improvements, right? You need to measure how you're getting value from the improvements and communicate and celebrate, right? If you communicate well and you have to celebrate your wins, come on, we finally met the target. Go for a team outing, go for a dinner outside, enjoy the sweet moments that you have achieved, and then build that momentum. It's quite infectious to play with a kind of teamwork. So we spend a lot of time doing team bonding, working together, achieving a goal, and stuff. So it has to be fun, right? It's not about always work. It needs to be fun. You need to enjoy, and you need to celebrate it for you as a company, as a part of your resources, so that they are all motivated to deliver meaning value. So, with that, I come to the end of my presentation today on CSI in action. Hope you got some learnings in this process. I have 10 more minutes opened up. If you have any questions, please use the question window to post your questions and I will take it up from there. As I said, we are doing these workshops. I will be facilitating the ITIL courses. We'll be shortly launching our intermediate courses. We have all the service life cycle courses lined up. I will be facilitating some of these sessions. You will get some practical advice of how to implement. So I strongly encourage you to enroll for the foundation intermediate courses where that we can know more of it, right? So I see someone raising their hand. Let me see. Let me unmute Debashish. Debashish, go ahead. You're unmuted. Debashish, you're unmuted. You can ask a question. I don't know whether Debashish is able to hear
Hi,
me.
hi.
Yeah.
Can you help?
Yeah.
Can you
Yes,
hear me?
Debashish. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going through your webinar, and what I found is like you are explaining the CSI process very
Hmm.
well explained and very much understandable.
Hmm.
But I'm not able to correlate the ITIL and CSI. I mean, how they work together or how they are associated with each other.
Okay, so that's a good question, Debashis. So ITIL has got five core volumes, right? That means service strategy. That means you start from a strategy. So continual service improvement is one of the core volume. So what they do is, let's say they start with the strategy where they are rolling out new services, right? From the new services, then you say, okay, if I need to roll out these services, how do you design? So they come up with the design aspect of architecture, process, models, policies. Then you transition that particular service, right? So they talk about a module called service transition. So it could be for your products, it could be for a service. So ITIL talks about service transition and as volume three. So where you do build, test, and deployment, right? So we're talking about change management, we're talking about configuration management of an infrastructure, and release and deployment management. Then we talk about service operations where you have delivered a product or service and it is up and running, right? Then we come to service operations where you say, oh, I have an issue with my server. I am not able to receive emails. That is coming to the operational aspect, right? Now, the next volume in ITIL is continual service improvement. Okay, they say that this is not working. Why is it not working? How do we prevent that from happening? So that is where CSI will focus on improving aspects at strategy level, design level, transition level, operation level, and the continual service improvement. So continual service improvement is encompassing all the four, five core volumes of strategy, service design, service transition, service operations to deliver something. Hope that answers your question, Devashish.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So
Thanks
that's
for the
that's a
explanation.
that's a cycle that we are talking about, and we are just talking about one of this volume called continual service improvement. But they are all tied together, and they you can make improvements in strategy, you can make improvements in design, in anything. But this is just giving an overview of continual service improvement at this juncture. Any other questions? Do you have any other question? Because you're still you can put your hands down if you have done that. Yeah, okay. I will just see if I have any other questions. More idea on gamification. You can send a mail to the support at Edureka, and then they will be able to connect with me, and then I will be able to provide more insights on that. So write a mail to support@edureka.co, and then they will be able to do that. The next question is there any full form of ITIL? So ITIL stands for IT Infrastructure Library. So we are talking about network, storage, database, server, all those stuff, you know. So how do we define best practice processes? So ITIL stands for IT Infrastructure Library. It is a framework or a best practice to manage infrastructure related stuff. Okay. So I answered the question for Debashis. Next one from Sunand, how KPIs and SLAs are related to this, and any suggestions to improve that in that area? Suggest from beginner point of view. Okay, so KPI stands for key performance indicators, right? So let's take an example. And SLAs, again, SLAs are service level agreements. Now, let me give an example, very basic example, Sunand. Now, let's take an example of a um, availability of a service. Let's say you're going a transaction in ATM, and the ATM says that it will be available 100% of the time. Okay, let's take an argument, say that any ATM should operate 100%. So that is your SLA with your customer, right? Now you go to a, let's say, a Citibank or an ICICI bank and give your and go to the ATM center. That ATM center is not dispensing cash; it's not working. So when they took a report at the end of the month, they see they have been only be able to provide 80% availability as opposed to 100% availability, right? So your service level targets or service level agreement talks that you need to maintain 100%. But when you took a record, report, you're only able to manage 80%. Now, this is where the continual service improvement will come in picture. You say, I am an 80%. If I need to improve from 80% to 100%, what changes that I need to make? Do I need to improve my infrastructure? Would I need to improve my process? What is the data that I've got? Okay, this month I've got 80%. What is the last month data? So you do the 7-step approach that we talked about. What are we going to improve? What do we measure? What data we got it? Where are we here today, and how do we improve? So it is all about CSI when you're talking about metrics. So metrics and measurements are nothing but your key performance indicators and service level agreements. Hope that gives you an idea, Sunan. Hope that explains you how KPIs and SLJs are related with the continual service improvement. So you're improving from the existing target to another target. So, Rautu, this is not a software. So, gamification is just a principle. It's more of a game that we play physically. Um, so you can, when you click on the link, there is a link. It reaches to the website, and then you can contact us from there, and we can give you details to that. So the blog that I wrote has got introduction of that and what gamification is all about, and those thing about doing it. So okay, no, I'm asking about okay, framework. So ITIL is basically a framework. It's not a software. It's just a framework, meaning some best practices. Like, for example, people say, follow this process. So it's just like process guidelines. I can say it's not a software, it's guidelines or best practice of doing something. Okay. So hope that explains what it is. Okay. So any other questions for what we have discussed so far? Any questions so far what we have discussed? Okay, so if there are no more questions, thanks a lot for your time. Please take your time to fill the feedback, a short feedback of